Hopefully we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Oh, yep, there it goes. All right, perfect. Welcome, Kristen, to one of my Soul Connection calls. I want to start this call the way I do all of my calls, which is just orienting our audience. So can you give a little introduction to who you are and what you do or be or both in the world?
Ooh, I love that question of do, be, or both. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I signed up for this months ago. So, I've just been so excited to be able to have this conversation and be able to chat more and see what comes up. So, thank you for inviting me. My name is Kristen Gerlanc. I'm an inner work and relationship coach, and I also do remote energy clearing work, which has been a newer addition to my business but something I incredibly love. I really started out in the field working in mental health. So I was in that field for 10 years, discovered ontological coaching and trauma informed coaching, and fell in love and just really wanted to be an entrepreneur to support my dream life. You know, a lot of times as coaches, we're creating dream lives for other people. And that was just a huge conversation for me. It's like, what's my dream life, what supports me and my visions, but how can I also stay true to my lifelong vision of being able to support and empower people? And I do that through a lot of relationship work, self-empowerment work, spiritual work, and just really deeply believing that everyone should be able to own their inner goodness and magic with tons of love and without shame.
I mean, are we secretly the same person? I'm wondering. Like, our mission is just so aligned. Like, it's clear to me why we're here to have this conversation. So, yes, there's so much that you just shared that is so relevant to me and my background as well. So, just in case people are tuning in from your side of things, I'll say hi. I'm Safrianna Luna. I'm known as the Queer Spirit Guide. And I also come from a mental health background and have been transitioning into coaching, consulting, and spiritual services. And I too love just clearing energy and lifting burdens on a, feeling into it level. I'm so excited for this conversation today because I know one of the main threads that you and I share is being really, truly trauma informed. And one of the things coming from a trauma therapist background, coming in and being really involved in the trauma world for years, coming into the coaching space, I suddenly realized like, oh, we are not trauma informed here on the whole, right? Like there are coaches that are, but like on the whole, no, we were not. And on the whole, I was just seeing a lot of not ownership, not feeling the feelings in the community. So I'm so curious to hear more from you about that and what that transition was like for you. And yeah, just like tell me more about everything.
Well, in terms of everything, is there like a good starting point for even leaving my job and or what I've noticed in the
Yeah,
industry?
I'm curious if you had the same experience as me. Like, did you kind of leave that mental health? Because one of the things you spoke to that I feel like is really relevant to me right now is you wanted to find this balance in your life where you're actually like able to take care of you the way that you were coaching or helping other people to achieve in their life. And that is, I think many of us entrepreneurs walk into entrepreneurship in the hopes that we can live our dreams and lean into what's right for us. So as you came into that space, was that originally your intention? Was you'd kind of noticed that the mental health field wasn't able to sustain that lifestyle for you?
Yeah, at least where I was particularly working and what I was doing, because I know there's some people that work in mental health and they have extremely balanced lives and they're living their dream life. I had a lot of different jobs, and at one point, I was working at a nonprofit for a pretty long time. And I just noticed a lot of the trends in the industry where, at least especially in the nonprofit space, where I just kept having more and more clients and less time off. They were laying people off or not. Like normally, if there was a position where we had two staff members to watch like a group home with 10 people, now it was like one staff member and just like continuous cuts. And, if you really value excellence and care, and tenderness in the space, and being able to meet all those needs, it sometimes felt impossible. And yet having that inner drive to still live to like that standard.
Mhm.
And I actually had my own therapist, just got continued reflections about like how burnt out I was, just feelings of being trapped in my life at the time. Sleep got really bad, which is like a red flag for me because I would be like preemptively stressed about going into work before going into work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just at that point I was living in a mindset where I felt like there was a lot of lose-lose situations stacked against me, and I wasn't sure how to change it because I didn't really fully have the tools to do so at the time.
Yeah, and so when you came more into the kind of coaching and consulting space and were realizing like I need to have this balance for myself, how did you kind of gear up to it actually supporting that vision for you? Because I imagine, coming in at the bottom, like you're starting fresh, so you're not like just suddenly living the dream life. How did you begin to scaffold up to your vision?
So I had actually left my mental health job and I was working a corporate position, when I discovered coaching. So I did have, we don't have to go deep into it, but I did have like that mini existential sort of like, what's next for me crisis.
Right.
And then one of my best friends was a coach and a coach trainer. And she actually really was like, you have all like the inherent skill sets to do this. So, like, this is something I would seriously consider that you pursue. So it honestly felt like divine intervention, from her, like, and like, because it was just exactly what I needed.
Right.
It was like a huge overhaul and personal transformation, but then also building my career. But I did it where I started going out in the world like 2019, 2020 as a coach. I started taking on clients. I try to coach like whenever I could. So um, at first I had like clients like, I really wanted experience, so I wasn't even charging like a lot of money to coach. And it's just like it was that scaling of like building my business and then like actually charging like living wages and just scaling upward. But I was just so like I just need to get experience, and not from a scarcity place, but just like starting out. And I really just kept uh just building the business and like believing in myself, and just I kept seeking opportunities until it became a real full-time job in 2020 for me. So
Yeah, so it sounds like a lot of it was just kind of continuing to put yourself out there and be brave as you were learning how to step fully into this, this sort of being and doing that you are now. So that's a great, I mean, that's good advice for us all, right? Like sticking with the dream and the vision, even when it feels really, really hard. And, the title of this episode that we ended up settling on was Conscious Unfolding. You and I kind of went back and forth via email on what to call it. And so I'm curious with this theme of consciously unfolding and literally discovering, new layers of yourself. What was some of the stuff that finally was able to come to the surface of your gifts, your talents, your like fullness that you were able to finally embrace when you stepped into more of the coaching world?
I had a really big realization among many that first year in my coaching development program, that I just compartmentalized a lot of myself. So I had like viewed what parts of me were socially acceptable or desirable. And, like everyone kind of got to see those parts of myself. And then there were other parts of myself that actually I don't think from a societal standpoint inherently are bad. I mean, I think there are a lot of misogynistic constructs around women being like outspoken or having a perverse sense of humor or being like owning their sexuality. So like those very well exist. I'm a big proponent that there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But I think it was like a big intimacy thing where I was like, there's some people that get to see who this, and this is very real and it's not fake at all. Like my like super serious, grounded, like nurturing, like kind of like mother crone in a meadow that will like hug you and like give you like good and like you know what I mean? Like it's like that sort of really like grounded, peaceful presence all the time. But there was like this other like side of me that's very like witty and silly and a little eccentric and like makes really like punchy, kind of dark, like sexual jokes and like people that get to know all parts of me like they love all those parts of me and they like celebrate all those parts of me, but I didn't notice I had trauma just living in our society as a woman and different times where those parts of myself were really suppressed or like I was told like inherently that's wrong or like a woman shouldn't say those things or a woman shouldn't have those opinions, and I just didn't realize how much I internalized that from a leadership perspective of like showing up fully integrated versus like don't show those parts
Mhm.
because that could be repulsive or polarizing or
All
like
the things we're taught not to do when we're raised, assigned female at birth, being ladylike and proper and all of those absolutely get internalized. And it is trauma that we then have to unlearn if we want to step into our fullness.
yeah, 100%. And I can't say I do it perfectly yet, but it's still a work in progress, but it's something I've taken a lot of ownership for and played with a lot, like in spaces where both spaces that I know are safe and spaces I also know aren't safe, and just being with whatever is.
Yeah, I have this metaphor I use a lot. I like to use metaphors. That might be a natural number nine thing, but I see things as ramps. Anything can be a ramp in life, right? So breaking out of misogyny and internalized like anti-woman attitudes, we're going to start at the bottom and we're going to have to build our way up to really be able to stand in, a new knowing at the top of that ramp. But even when we get to the stage where we're really, really good at self-care and we don't have these attitudes at the bottom anymore, we still sometimes sit down and get tired and slide back down the ramp. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, once we've built our way all the way up there once, it's easier to get there. And that's where like a lot of the mindset stuff of like renegotiating our relationship with trauma and our triggers, a lot of it is going to be building a little bit up this ramp and getting a little bit better, and then we slide back down, and then we build ourselves up a little bit further and get a little bit more resources, and then we slide back down. And yeah, none of us are ever going to be perfect at managing all of this because there's a lot to hold space for ourselves in this very complicated human life.
Oh, 100%. It's always a reminder to hold space for your humanness. And I'm a big progress, not perfection, even though I am a long-term perfectionist. So that is equally like a daily message for myself. I can own that 100%. I'm not even gonna like front on that at all. But yeah, like I always love when you see even those memes online where it's like those progress, it's not always totally linear and you see like the staircases, but then there's like a big dip sometimes. And that can be very true for ourselves and even our clients because we could have triggers in our lives, like maybe they're trauma related, maybe they're not, could be circumstantial. There's so many reasons why something could re-trigger us, and um, from how it could look on the outside or how it could make us feel, we could view it as a setback when it's really just like part of the human experience. If life swings on a pendulum and we're always going to experience joy and grief, life and death, sickness and health, that it's just very natural that we will have these ups and downs. And I like to like remind myself and my clients or my loved ones, like, how do we talk to ourselves when we're having our human moments? Like, how do
Mhm.
we truly love and support ourselves and our humanness?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I myself have gotten to a stage now in my own self-development where I'm really able to hold that for myself. And yet we have to feel it to heal it, right? We need to feel our feelings and process through our feelings. We can't just be like, nope, I put them over there and I'm fine now, because then they pop back up. But it's been very interesting to come to that stage in my personal life where I can be saying, oh my gosh, I'm so upset about this, and this didn't go the way I expected it to, and like be in my feels, and there's no inner self-talk that's beating me up for it. But then I see that reflected in other people still. They'll be like, well, are you being really critical with yourself right now? And I'm like, no, I'm just feeling the feeling. Like, it's not critical. It's not negative. It's just a feeling. And I'm allowed to feel it and process it and talk through it. And I don't have to be down in the spiral with it. And that, getting to that point where we can do that, I mean, that took tremendous work on my end. And it took a lot of uncoupling from codependency and like really stepping into ownership. But without that ownership, we can't really get to the point where we can be not self-critical either. And that's kind of this messiness of it, right? Like we have to own what we've done that we're not happy with or that isn't supportive of us in order to be able to actually release the self-judgment. And what a duality and what a difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to acknowledge you for all of the work you've done to just really own your inner world, be accountable for yourself and people in your life, and also notice just like not judging or labeling emotions, which can also be like tons of people's trauma. Like, how was anger viewed in their household? Was it always painted as a bad thing? So then a healthy expression of it as an adult doesn't exist. So like I've noticed that too, and even having to unpack all of my relationship with all emotions. Like, do I have a positive or negative charge on this type of word or this type of experience, even though as a human I'm going to experience all of them? Um, I notice I lost my train of thought. I can own that.
That's part of these conversations, right? It's like, and I notice this almost every episode I record is like there are so many things to talk about when we just open a space like this together. Like when we get real with each other and when we're willing to talk about the messy human experiences, our brains are swirling with like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that finally I can talk to a peer about and like be in this energy of like ownership together. What a strange and novel concept for so many of us, right?
Yeah.
So own it, right? We lose our trains of thought all the time. I
Yeah.
wanted to, have you found it?
It was just, I remembered it was going back to your statement about duality and holding it all. And yeah, I think it is inherently messy or can feel messy. And it's also not really something that's taught on a societal level, especially in capitalist environments where it's very much like sweep the feelings under the rug, like carry on, keep being successful. There's also tons of generational trauma where, people were just doing their best to survive, and how sometimes people internalize that was to also like push down those emotions too, to keep trucking along and like making
Mhm.
sure they had adequate shelter, like adequate food. So like there's so much love and grace for like everyone that came before us that was also doing their best to survive by pushing down emotions.
Mhm.
And then also seeing like the impact now, how we want to change and grow as a society so we can feel things to more completely, get to the other side of healing for those experiences that come up, and be more integrated people.
Yes. And integrating the fact that we have these experiences that are pleasant and unpleasant, and it is the duality of life. Like when we can truly integrate that knowing, it really it takes the pressure off the idea that life's going to be some perfect, smooth experience. If we can just, if I can just get to whatever point, right? We always make these stories. Well, when I can just get here, I'm going to be happy. When I can just get here, I'm going to be happy. When I complete this milestone, I'll be happy. Maybe for 3 seconds, you'll be happy when you hit that milestone, but then the rest of life is still going to be there. And that one milestone is never, ever, ever going to be the be all end all. I mean, there just can't be anything that's ever going to keep us permanently happy when we live in a reality of, like you were saying, this duality of life and death, and sickness and health. Like we exist on spectrums of experiences.
Yeah, and also, even to that, just like as you were speaking, and I like think about like probably each of our own journeys with that in particular, like milestones and being content with each other, like ourselves, our clients' experience and our loved ones' experiences. The question I like to even bring to myself and to others is, what if I was entirely lovable just as I am right now? And it's like you in this moment, everything you bring to the table, like there's someone out there could be multiple people out there that just like celebrate you entirely for who you are. Like you are the gift, like you're like one of the best things that's ever happened to them. And it's great, like to continuously have goals, to know like there's areas to work on ourselves and go after them, but we can still keep loving and appreciating the versions that currently exist, knowing we're still trying to get somewhere, but that version isn't less than. It's just where we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that you framed it that way. And I am like super woo creatrix timeline hopping, like out there. So even as you were saying that, I was just like seeing this picture of this sort of, quantum timeline where all versions of us are lovable, whether past, present, or future, right? Like, and when we can accept that reality once and for all, like everything does become a little bit easier. Even on those days where we're like, oh, I don't like myself today, or, this is really freaking hard. If we've had that experience even once, right, we kind of build that little like ramp up to like, what if I am lovable and perfect across all versions of me, right? Once we've accessed that, even for like 1 second, I feel like we've like leveled up into a new way of thinking and being, because we've accessed that core truth finally, that we are lovable and perfect, and a gift just as we are, and
Yeah.
how cool that we get to expand and grow.
Yeah, I love the both and of it. And I just think there is like such an inherent unshaming in really claiming all the parts are of ourselves, because there's a lot of narratives where and I've seen in like different spaces, especially like some like sometimes conservative spiritual spaces where it's like, oh, like this part of myself was like forsaken or like dirty or unclean or unlovable. And but now I like reached this point, and that can be like a shame that people, if unconsciously they're unaware of, that they're still holding on to. And that can affect people in lots of ways, like lots of like really insidious ways. And I my like hope and desire is just, it's okay if there's like a past version of you where you don't like how you behaved, and maybe you were operating in unhealth and like hurting people. Like we've all hurt people. Like I know I've hurt people in my
Same.
life and my existence. And so it's like, what have I learned from that experience?
Mhm.
Like what do I not want to repeat going forward? Is there a way I could be accountable or repair this situation? Like sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, depending on what partnership is available to us. But
Mhm.
I think like whatever that journey is to self forgiveness, acceptance, accountability, um, then those parts of ourselves can be integrated as opposed to permanently shamed, permanently like locked away in a dark corner. Like we don't talk about Kristen from 2011. Like I don't know. Like
Gosh, what year of me would I just be like, no, we don't talk about her anymore? I'm sure there was a year, I'm sure.
yeah, I actually don't know what happened in 2011, and that was like the first thing I said. So I'm like, is there something from Kristen 2011? Like now I have to go back in the timeline and check
I'm
it
thinking
out.
it would be 2013 me. If I could just go back and 2013 me, we could timeline hop. I That'd be great, but we can't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and as you were talking about the self-forgiveness piece, something that's been coming up for me a lot lately, the word recommitment and just like the prefix re, because we're going to redo, remake, reinvent, reclaim, recommit all the time when it comes to ourselves. Like when we're really in a relationship with ourselves and we're really aware of, we're consciously unfolding, right? We're going to come across new events or new situations or new information that's going to make us readdress how we view the world, how we view ourselves, how we view other people, maybe how we view a work situation. And so we need to be able to recommit in any moment to like, oh, I'm allowed to pivot. I'm allowed to change. I'm allowed to be flexible. Even though I loved this 20 minutes ago doesn't mean I have to love it now, right? So there's this other layer of accepting that we are always going to be changing, and then to be able to forgive ourselves for anything that comes up with the trauma when we change our minds, because that's, I think, change brings up a lot of traumatic feelings that we can feel like, oh, can I forgive myself for having to change in the first place?
Yeah, because like sometimes change can be if there's trauma associated to how you view change within yourself, or like how you initiate or partner with change in partnerships. So there can be a lot of stuff of like, how has that gone historically? What either lived trauma am I bringing into these conversations that are kind of still running their scripts and stories? And we're not bypassing them in any way because they were real at some point.
Yeah.
And then a big conversation with trauma I've had is like, there was a lot of spaces in my life growing up, and then relationships I chose from trauma,
Mhm.
that my voice, even if I shared upset calmly or rationally in partnership, got like just very dismissed. And like there was like either gaslighting or turned around on me. Lots of like Darvo kind of stuff happening. And I had a view for a long time that that just wasn't possible. Like that I was like, where do people exist that I could have these conversations with, and it doesn't go this way. So I had a lot of trauma um believing that it was possible. So like my soul was like, no, this is possible for me. And then I was really, really scared when I would try it out with new people and be like, please go well, like please go well. And I have been very fortunate that I have so many loved ones and close partnerships, both friendship, like romantically, business, and otherwise, where that has been a real reality for me. And it's been amazing. But like the growing pains of getting there and like believing that that was true was really scary and
Yeah.
like really hard.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that, because that is something that so many people will struggle with, right? Their status quo has been danger, it's been dismissal, it's been gaslighting. And that was, I mean, you described a lot of what I've been through too. So I really do feel that. And there's memes, the memes that are like Twitter quotes and whatnot. I remember seeing one that's like the hardest relationship you'll ever be in is the first healthy one after whatever you've been through, right? And that is so true, because we are sitting with past us and present us, and all we have that we've perceived is what the past us has perceived. And so to put that bravery on, right? Like put the 30 seconds of courage hat on and be like, I'm going to put myself out there again, knowing that 100% of the time in the past, pretty much, or it's felt that way, right? It did not go well. And the immense courage and self trust to put oneself out there after that. So I know you had to do a lot of self work to be able to get there, to say, like, I'm going to finally put myself out there again. What was that
Yeah.
journey like for you of working on your own stuff?
It was a very consistent process. I worked with both a coach and a therapist around it. So I knew it was something like I fully believed in and I wanted to be fully accountable for on my end because I just saw there was trauma in my space around it. And like I've said, like, but the full belief, like under that core, there was that light that I was like, no, I know healthy communication is accessible to me. I fully believe it. So I took on, like I said, both coaching and therapy. And therapy I even did some EMDR
Mhm.
around some of the memories of um, really traumatic conversations that had occurred in my life, and where I was really confused about how they went, especially like when I was not in a confrontational space.
Right,
But like just like the association with like, oh, like it's actually not space safe for me to speak
right.
my truth. So that helped me, like the whole gamut helped me tremendously. And I also did spiritual work around it too. I worked with a spiritual response, well, two at this point, spiritual response therapy practitioners. And that was
Mm,
what I ended up getting certified in myself. And that's what I also do in my practice. But I did a lot of remote energy work. So it was like a combination of like past life, present life, discordant energy, like
I
so the whole
love
gamut.
that.
So I like when I say I took it on from like every angle
You
possible, like
did.
I took it on from every angle
I
possible.
respect that. I because I'm the same way. I always joke, we call me a self-development junkie in my little polycule because I'm the one. Like, I'm always like journaling or like hiring another coach or practitioner to go deep with me on a subject for like a little while. It unpacking from every angle is a lot, but like then you know yourself so beautifully well and you can advocate for yourself so beautifully well, right? And without that, with the avoidance there, you're actually cutting yourself off from the ability to be in the healthy relationship where the communication can be out there. So, as scary as the work is, it's like so worth it on the other side. But getting started, like you and I can tell we want to, again, like I said, we seem to be on the same mission, right? Bringing people the knowledge that they can rise above the trauma and the trials that they've experienced and live a life of joy without shame, really. And so that's I'm always over here like the torch lit, like, you can do it, I believe in you. I promise it's possible for you too.
I'm definitely that person too. And I love that our missions are so aligned and just like the level of enthusiasm we've and dedication we've all brought to it. And I would love to just share for like anyone watching out there, if you are on this journey and you're taking on something tough or difficult, please do not put a timeline on yourself for how long it's going to take or how it's going to go. Um, I know, like me taking on the trauma for healthy conversations and really truly believing that people could hear me. I would say that was like a year to a year and a half of work. And when I went into it, I had no idea what it was going to look like. But what I will acknowledge myself for is I didn't judge myself in the process, and I just kept being with what was coming up. So
Yeah.
if you're watching this and there's something you want to take on, just give yourself all the grace and love that there's no right path. Healing isn't linear, and just love yourself in whatever you're creating, and you'll get there too, like if that's what
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you for that. That's such an important point because I know a lot of us walk into the sort of healing side of things and we want it to be done tomorrow. Of course we do, especially if our pattern has been avoiding and like pushing it over there. The idea of it, really looking at it can be unbearable. And I often describe it as like monster under the bed syndrome, right? Once you're actually in it, you've looked under the bed, chances are you will find out it's not as big and scary as you thought it was, as long as you have someone there that's supporting you, right? Because you're going to have that person to fall back on and shine the light under the bed when it gets really scary again. So, don't do it alone either. There are many resources out there for people to talk or to be able to find accepting communities where they can just be themselves. We're creating those spaces in the world to make sure that everybody has a place to go and to
Yeah.
be and share.
Yeah, and then there's also communities too where there isn't even financial investments where you can find connection and be in these types of conversations too. And then obviously if you were ever taking on anything like with trauma, making sure you do work with a trained professional that can deal with that, just so you can be ethically supported.
Yeah, and I think that's an important piece, like not every resource is trauma informed, and being able to do your research and see what somebody who's going to help you with traumatic things knows about trauma. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Uh, because as we talked about at the beginning, like not every practitioner out there is trauma informed. And it's something that I see that as part of my mission, is bringing trauma informed practices to the world and just talking about it so that we can be aware. You don't know someone else's circumstances, and it's best to err on the side of communication whenever possible. So,
Yeah, and for sure, and just like getting really clear on the distinctions between coaching versus therapy and counseling. And, in coaching, I can have like all of the future-based conversations with you in the world. Like I can know about a situation, but not going like super past deep into the weeds, especially like getting into trauma and like deep resurfacing in that way. And, I've just been very upfront in my practice, like whether it's someone ongoing or like if a new person comes in, of just really being clear about what I can or can't do ethically, but then always providing or being in a partnership if that person needs resources or help finding resources, like if they need a therapist, a counselor, somatic practitioner, they're interested in EMDR, like whatever it is, like making sure that they know how to access that if
mhm.
I'm not the appropriate fit for them.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, like finding appropriate fit and like good, that good bond with somebody is such an important element too. But again, we are sort of these living examples that you can do it. You can find, I mean, oh, I think I had like 12 therapists before I found one that was like, I can stay with you for a long time and we're going to go deep. And then we worked together for like 7 years. So, like, it can be like finding a partner sometimes, to find professionals that can really support us. And going back to your piece about like, don't, don't put a timeline on it, right? Finding the right help sometimes needs to be without a strict timeline. We might have to shop around a little and see what works for us. But yeah. Oh my gosh, I feel like we could go in like 50 more directions. I like have so many things I want to pick your brain about. And I also want to be mindful of our time and everything today. So like, are there any other threads that you're feeling like really called to speak to today? Because these soul connection calls, like basically, I am so down to have them whenever, because I believe that just having live conversations, real conversations in front of people does demonstrate things that sometimes we never knew were possible. I always speak to the example of, I did not know self compassion was possible until I mentioned that therapist that I saw for 7 years. She showed me it was possible. So these kinds of conversations, I really think, show people what is possible between people. So yeah, is there anything else you want to talk to today, Kristen?
I mostly just wanted to comment on I love the dynamic of this conversation because neither of us, we didn't have a script, we didn't have a real outline. So it's like we had the umbrella topic, but I think the cool thing about these conversations is it's also even a practice of showing up like quote unquote unprepared. You have to be totally present in the moment, listen to your partner in the conversation, and just process whatever is coming up real time, which I think is also a leadership growth and edge to lean into because that can be incredibly vulnerable for a lot of people. And I can own even like a little bit before this call, I had some like that combination of excitement and some nerves because I'm always like, what's going to happen? And I'm like, I'm also cool with not knowing what's going to happen, but I've worked on that too. So I want to be transparent that even being in these structures can bring up things from just that human perspective, that leadership perspective. But I do appreciate just being able to share this space with you and actually like leaning into that edge on purpose.
Yes, and thank you for, that takes courage. I did so much work around visibility. Like showing up live was so if you told me 3 years ago that I'd be showing up on live regularly, I'd been like, ha, 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 yeah, right. Because I was still in trauma mindset about showing up live and what that meant, because I had had a person, an intimate partner, tell me that I was too awkward to have real conversations with people, and I internalized that. And so that took me, I totally respect the courage that it takes when you're not sure how it's going to go. And just putting yourself out there is hard because people make comments like that, like, oh, you're not capable, you're awkward or whatever. And it might really be projection from them, but we don't always know that, especially if we haven't had the chance to do this deeper work on really getting to know ourselves. That's not accessible to all of us from the get-go. Like, let's be really, really clear, right?
Yeah.
Most of us grew up without access to healthy models of communication.
Yeah, that's really very real. And may I take a moment to acknowledge you and how you've shown up in this space?
Absolutely.
Well, I think, first of all, I don't think you are awkward at all. And I love your stage presence and just the warmth that I've felt even virtually, um, have never having met you in person. But I just really want to acknowledge you for creating such a safe space and such an open and heartfelt space in this live. I've felt just like so safe and secure being in your energy this entire time. So I think you really create that space for yourself and others. So
Thank you.
I'm sorry you had that experience with that partner, but I'm
Brilliant.
glad that that didn't stop you and like you continued onward. And I hope you got feedback from other people like me that were like, no, like you need to be out there because you have great thought leadership and you have a great presence and people need to hear that or like you would inspire so many people from being you. So just thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And oh, it's hard to receive compliments sometimes. So thank you for giving me the chance to just receive that. That's something that I think many of us struggle with because again, we didn't have that example of like building each other up. The motto of my brand is uplifting the others. Like that is, my mission is for us all to eventually uplift each other because we can reach higher heights when we're all helping each other out. So thank you for the help that you put out into the world and the healing that you do and the space that you clear for people and the conversations that you're willing to have about the impact of trauma because it is so important and essential in healing this very, very hurting world.
Yeah, thank you for that love and that acknowledgement. And I appreciate it and it is received. So thanks for sharing that with me too.
So whether you caught us live or in the replay today, feel free to leave a comment if you would like to work with Kristen in some capacity or myself, find us. We're here and we would love to talk to you about living your life joyously without shame and being who you are and all the love that you are. So thank you again, Kristen and everyone else. And I guess until next time, put a little bow on this beautiful conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So, oh, sorry, I didn't
No, no,
mean
no.
to.
You can go for it.
No, I was gonna say thank you so much again for having me. I had an amazing time. So anyone that I'm being virtually connected to, even if it's not in a working capacity, but you just liked either of our vibes and were like want us to be in community, I'm also totally down to connect to anyone that just wants like more community or feels aligned with anything shared today. So feel free to reach out too for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, social support is important. Don't underestimate it. So we welcome you with open arms if you want to be in our spaces and do good things in the world together. So, all right, goodbye for now, friends.